Whoa! What's up, diggity dogs? I just made a mess in the other room. High five!
Well, there we go. I threw the new intro on anyway, because it's technically the first video of the year. But 2020, that was a thing, wasn't it? You know, all the unfunny, oh, this year's so crazy, overplayed memes aside, because let's face it, that got really played out real quick. A lot did happen this year. And today, I will be talking about that. Obviously, we're in a new year now, 2021. Hopefully things will be a hell of a lot better. But I'm kind of worried they might be worse. We'll see. I'm hoping we're not strapped in for a shit decade. I'll be cautiously optimistic that we're not, but you know, I also think that we probably are in for a shit decade. We'll see. But let's go ahead and start this new year video off right, because I do these every year, these end of year roundups. This one's going to be different though, because it's going to be super filled with opinions and divisive stuff, so I will warn you in advance to that. But we're going to go over all the stuff that has happened this year. But to do that, we got to backtrack a little bit to the end of last year, right? So at the end of 2019, there was a lot of stuff going on in my personal life, a lot of which I won't get into because it's private and it wouldn't mean anything to you guys anyway. But among a lot of the drama I was going through at the time, I also got my dog put down because she was suffering and couldn't stand up and it was terrible. So this is what was left of Chloe, right? There's a picture of her when she was a puppy, and that's what's left of her and her paw print. She was 13, which is really old for a dog, but her brother Petey, my other dog, is still here. There's Petey there. How you doing, old boy? I'm my buddy. So Petey's 14 now, and with Chloe gone, we figured he was probably getting lonely, and Kyler wanted a dog, so... Yes, you just cannot wait until it's your turn, can you? We got Kiki. Stop it! I like how literally every time I have filmed Kiki, she nibbles on my arm. Stop it, Kiki. But yeah, this is Kiki. She's about a year now. We've had her about a year anyway. Kiki. Hey, Boopy. Stop it. Good girl. Yeah, because of all the personal stuff I was going through at the end of 2019, I took most of December 2019 off, or at least the end of December, and then all of January and a good chunk of February. I did return later on in February in my return video, right? So there was a weird hiatus between the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020 on my channel. But on the plus side, I returned very shortly afterward and began slowly working things back to normal. Obviously, there were some changes, and my content has been a little bit different. Because it's been sort of a transitionary period of getting back to normal here, as far as the channel goes, right? And as I said, I've been slowly working my way back to normalcy. Haven't fully achieved normalcy yet, but slowly working my way back, right? But let's talk about some positives from this year. 2019 was the worst year of my life behind the scenes. In a lot of ways, 2020 was better in my personal life than that. I know that's crazy to say, just given the way that this year has been for everything. But personally, there was less drama in my actual personal life, so that helped a hell of a lot. I will say the world itself was much crazier, but there's a positive that at least my personal life felt a lot better this year. But in addition to that, it was the 10-year anniversary of my channel, and I did this big, long, somewhat kind of like a documentary, retrospective sort of thing that took an in-depth look at the history of my channel, and that was really fun to make. It's where I got this hat, because I bought a Clockwork Orange outfit for that, just for the intro. I spent $100 on a fucking costume just to do an intro, so hopefully that was worth it. But luckily the hat became a mainstay, so I guess that's worth it. Got some fluff on it, though. There we go. And the channel surpassed 900 subscribers. I'm almost at 1,000 now. I got 982 last I checked. But every day I gain a couple and I lose a couple. It makes sense. That's just how it goes, right? But at the beginning of 2020, everyone was talking about how there was going to be World War III because there was some stuff with Iran going on. And in all honesty, that honestly wasn't even on my radar because I was still dealing with personal stuff, so I didn't even know that was going on until somebody brought it up to me after it was relevant. But there was a lot of talk about that earlier on in the year. And on a lighter note, I mean, it's lighter in the context of other things. The Asian giant hornets, also known colloquially as murder hornets, appeared in the U.S. this year. Came over on a boat from China. And oh boy, does China have a lot to do with this year. But, and apparently they were predominantly in Washington. I don't think they got outside of it, but those hornets, those are big fuckers. They're like this big, right? And, their stings are like really potent. And they'll fuck you up. But, I mean, Asia and, like, they live in Japan and, like, other parts of Asia, so, you know, those hornets are not, like, the worst thing, because I don't think they're as bad as an Africanized killer bee, but, they're still pretty bad. Luckily, they, like I said, it seems to only be isolated to the state of Washington, so if you live there, just watch out for them. I know that they were taking a lot of them out. They were, like, you know, burning up the nests and stuff, so hopefully they get rid of them all. Okay, but speaking of China, let's talk about the big one, right? Coronavirus. And this is where things are going to start getting slightly divisive and opinionated. It's only going to get worse from here, so you have been warned, because I'm going to be very blunt and very honest about every topic I talk about. Keep in mind, however, that if I say something you disagree with, that is fine. I do not condemn someone just because I disagree with them, but I'm going to make my opinions very clear. So, in around November of 2019, the coronavirus started popping up in China. A lot of people didn't even know about it at the time, but because I was watching, like, Styx Hexenhammer and stuff, I knew about it in advance. But, couple months of it went by, and eventually it spread across the world. In January, it made contact in the U.S. and was beginning to spread. Initially, the borders were shut, but it was kind of too late. Like, the borders were cut off from China, and of course, Trump was called xenophobic for doing it, and then Pelosi was like, let's go party in Chinatown, because she's fucking stupid. But, so yeah, and it's funny because a lot of things have flip-flopped on which side who says what about the virus, right? But cutting off the travel, I'm sure, did lessen the blow, but we still ultimately have the official highest count. I don't trust China's numbers because China's not exactly known for transparency, but we have the official highest count of cases. In February, things were beginning to shut down more and more, right? And in late February, they're like, all right, we're going to shut down for 15 days to slow the spread. That might have even been March. I'm not 100% sure. I think it was February, but it might have been March. But then they're like, we're going to lock down for 15 days to slow the spread. And then that just, many places are still in the lockdown. Hell of a 15 days, am I right? 10 months. 10 months of lockdowns. Luckily, where I live, the lockdowns were fairly moderate, and I work an essential services job, like, so even when we were at our peak of lockdown, I still was at work because my job is an essential service. So even when the stay-at-home order was in place, and we did get one here, it just wasn't really enforced to the fullest extent. But in case I got pulled over or something going to and from work, I had a little letter from my employer saying, I am essential, leave me the fuck alone. Not in those words, I'm paraphrasing, of course. But as you can imagine, shutting things down crippled the economy. And then with some other events, the economy got even further impacted, but we'll get to those in a minute. Like I said, only gonna get spicier from here on out. But you have Dr. Fauci, who is like he's looked at as the golden boy of stopping COVID for some reason, when literally he just waits 2 days and repeats what the news has already said, so he's constantly changing his stance on things. Originally, he said, don't wear a mask. Now he says, do wear a mask. And he keeps moving the goalposts. They all do. They keep moving the fucking goalposts on what they want. So Fauci originally said the same thing the WHO said, saying that we need, 60 to 70% herd immunity before, we could reach, equilibrium and normalize and everything could go back to more or less normal. Now Fauci's moving the goalpost again, saying no, 75 to 80%. And he's saying, oh, you see, you guys weren't ready to hear what I really think before. And we're still listening to this fucker when he's literally admitting he's been lying? What the hell? Not to mention Fauci's been caught without a mask. All of these people that are enforcing shit have been caught without masks. And it's like, it's hypocritical. You find all these governors that tell everyone they have to social distance, they have to wear masks, they can't go out, they can't do this, they can't do that. And then they literally break all their own rules. Even Dr. Birx, who was like the other big one, right? She was breaking her own COVID restrictions too. And she said, oh, but, my family. It's like, yeah, but what about everyone else's family, bitch? Because it's like, I feel for you on that. That's why I think we should reopen the country and just protect the vulnerable. That's what I think. I think lockdowns patently haven't worked. The WHO has literally now said that they don't work, that they're a bad idea and should be a last resort and avoided if possible. But then you still have places locking the fuck down. And all these new things keep coming out where they literally just contradict themselves over and over and over again. And it's getting real old real fast. Then there was the stimuluses, which I think probably not the best for the economy, right? We have the $1,200 one, and now we have this bullshit $600 one, which we'll get to a little bit later, because there's a lot of other stuff with that. But it's like, that money doesn't come out of nowhere. Did you know that 66% of the money that exists right now was printed this year? It used to only be 20%, then it was 30%. Now it's like as high as 66% I've seen. It's ridiculous. Inflation is going to go rampant, and people don't even care. So I'm definitely worried about the economy of the future. Don't get me started on that. I am legitimately worried about inflation and all this other stuff. But let's talk about the next big thing that happened besides the coronavirus and the World War III and the murder hornets, right? The George Floyd riots. Oh boy. So in June, a police officer, long story short, had his knee on the neck of a guy when he died. I say when he died because cause of death was ruled a heart attack. I'm not saying that the knee didn't exacerbate it. I still think that that guy should probably be charged with negligence because he kept his knee on after his pulse stopped. But after seeing like the body cam footage and getting the autopsies and all this other stuff, it's way more complex than people made it out to be. It was still a very bad thing that happened, and it's sad that it did. But people were just getting stir-crazy by being locked up at home and looking for an excuse to fucking snap. And this was the catalyst for that. So, after the death of George Floyd, some protests started. And hey, I'm all for some peaceful protests. I don't agree with the messaging because they use statistics that don't make sense. They go against the actual statistics that do make sense. And they try to act like there's this big problem of racism in the police force, which I'm not going to say that there's no racism in the police force, because there's probably racist cops. But I'm also not going to say that the vast majority are, and I'm also not going to say it's as widespread of a problem as people think it is. Because they'll go at, like, anything. Like, Jacob Blake, when he was going out, he had literally sexually assaulted a woman and was trying to steal her car with a kid in it. And he went after police with a knife and got shot. And people say, oh, you literally had Kamala Harris saying she was proud of him. Why are you proud of that? But obviously these protests did not stay peaceful. And they didn't stay peaceful very long at all. Same day we had cities being burned, stores being smashed, small businesses being destroyed and desecrated. And the whole time they say that they're fighting for black lives when they're destroying black-owned businesses and ruining black lives. Let me be clear, I've said this many times, but I do not like Black Lives Matter, the organization. They are disgusting, they are terrorists, and they destroy communities. Someone who makes the statement, I agree, the statement is true. They do obviously matter. But the organization behind it is a tool to be used by those who would want to push their own agenda. Because it's not even really about race. It's about pushing communism. I know I sound crazy saying that, but they literally have their fucking organizers of their organization saying, we are trained Marxists. For a long time, their official website said that they wanted to destabilize the nuclear family. There is a lot of shit on there that does not make any sense to be on there. If it was literally just about fighting police brutality and they were doing it the right way, I would be fully in support of the group even if I disagreed with their statistics. But that's not what it's about. It's about destruction, it's about bedlam, it's about chaos. Effectively, they've become a tool for Antifa, which a lot of people say, oh, it's just an idea, it's not a group. It is several groups essentially creating splinter cells. What it is there are several groups in different areas that all fight for a common goal. There may not be one huge organization, but there's enough small splinter cell organizations to make it a big threat. That is how it works. It is not an idea, it is a terrorist set of groups. I've lost a couple regular viewers for my stances on these things. There was one guy I remember when I did the first video about riots. He said, I support all of this activism. Black Lives Matter. You support all of this activism. You support destroying businesses, burning shit down, shooting people, because there's been a lot of deaths. A lot of deaths in this. And there's been deaths on both sides, in fairness, but that doesn't make it better. If anything, that makes it worse, because we're getting closer and closer to actual conflict. Yeah, I mean, I think we've already achieved actual conflict. You literally had fucking groups of people hunting down people and shooting them because of their political views. That has been happening. Like in, was it Portland, with that guy, was it Michael Reinl? He fucking tracked down that Trump supporter, said, yeah, we got one, we got another right here, bang, shot him dead. You had that Antifa-type security guard kill that other guy who pepper sprayed him. The whole thing's getting messy. There's a lot of death and violence and destruction right now. It's admittedly died down in these colder months, but in the summer it was at a peak, dude. It was fucking nuts. See, that's another thing this year, is I stopped caring what people think about me. I mean, I never really did, but I would kind of, like, skirt around politics, right? Because when I started this channel, it was actually started for my political views, albeit my political views were drastically different back then than they were now. I used to do, and most of those videos are gone, but I used to do conspiracy theory videos, because as a teenager I was a hardcore conspiracy theorist and an anarchist, and I actually was quite leftist when I was a teenager. Not so much now. Now I consider myself center-right, if anything, and I'm what you'd probably call a minarchist, meaning I want as little government as possible, because I don't think anarchy works. If I did think it worked, I would probably be an ANCAP by now, because I subscribe to that ideology a hell of a lot more than something as nonsensical as anarcho-communism, which literally cannot exist, because you cannot get cooperation without force. It just doesn't happen. That whole idea does not work. The idea of equal distribution of wealth and all this shit just doesn't work. It never has and it never will. I had a few other people get really salty and comment on it, like when I took the political compass test. Because like I said, I've been much more willing to talk about this shit this year. Even though I literally talked about this shit up until like 2016 or so, and then I stopped. But I used to make comments all the time back when I was anti-Trump. I'm very pro-Trump. Well, I'm pro-Trump now, but the problem is he has done things that have disappointed me. The thing is I'll get to that later, right? Yeah, that's another thing, was the election this year, but we'll get to that. Don't you worry, hold your horses. But that's another thing, even just saying that has probably pissed some people off already, and I don't care. But before we get into the election and stuff, let's talk about a drama that came out of fucking nowhere that I had this year that I think is fucking stupid that it had in the first place. But if you've been watching me for a while, you know that I love Go Nagai, and I especially love Devilman. My favorite manga franchise of all time, my favorite manga author of all time. Go Nagai, and Devilman specifically, are the shit. I have done over 100 videos on Go Nagai and his works. I have read nearly all of the canon Devilman stuff. The reason I say nearly is because Devilman Saga I can only find up to chapter 43. And I have read a good chunk of the non-canon stuff. I've read at least 20 out of the over 30 Devilman manga-related series. And when I say 20, I'm not talking about volumes, I'm talking about separate series in which I read all the volumes. So I like Devilman. But I did a rant, and it was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, right? It was half serious, half tongue-in-cheek. Talking about Ryo Asuka. And yes, it's Asuka. Fuck you, I don't care. But I was talking about Ryo and saying that he isn't gay because he's a hermaphrodite. A lot of people got really mad at that. There were a few different types of comments. There were the people who were calling me transphobic. There were the people who were calling me homophobic, which makes even less sense, but okay. There were people saying that I didn't understand the series, and that pissed me off a lot more than the people calling me phobics of stuff. Because saying that I don't understand Devilman when I've done over 100 videos on it and read as much shit as I have and watched as many goddamn animes as I have, pissed me off a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. But then you had people trying to educate me on how intersex works, and how this works, and how that works. And basically it boiled down to an argument of how we define sexuality. Because everyone was saying gender and sex are different, which I don't personally agree that they are, but for sake of argument, I'll grant you that, right? And this is going to piss people off, because gender is a touchy subject for some reason. But for sake of argument, let's pretend that gender and sex are different, right? Sexuality, in that case, patently has to be based on sex. Because number one, it is sexuality, not genderuality, which was a snarky comment I made in response to that. And there were plenty of people telling me, no, that's not how it works. It's about gender. It's like, okay. And people said that you can be non-binary and be gay if you're in a relationship. Like, let's say you're a biological male who is non-binary, and you're in a relationship with a gay cis man. They would call that gay. But how? If you say it's based on gender, and the partner is a gay cis man, and the other identifies as non-binary or gender fluid or some other made-up nonsense like that, I apologize for the condescending tone, but when you make up terms like non-binary and gender fluid, you're just trying to be special, okay? You can do it. I have no problem with you doing it, but it's when you get snarky and try to pretend that you can educate me on something like that I get a little snippy. But yeah, no one can come up with a counter-argument for that, because it's like, if you say it's based on gender, and by your own definition, you are neither man or woman, and then you're attracted to and dating a man, how in the fuck is that gay if you yourself do not identify as male? Now, people will say, well, that has nothing to do with Rio, because he identifies as male. In his human form, yes, and there's actually people who made good counter-arguments. And there were some people who said Rio's human form is biologically male, he didn't have his memory of being Satan, therefore he's gay. I'm like, you know what? That actually kind of makes sense. I still don't agree as a whole that Satan in Devilman is gay, but I will concede that in his human form, I guess I would define that as gay. Then there were people trying to tell me Rio is intersex. No, Rio is a hermaphrodite. There is a difference. People say, well, there's no such thing as a true hermaphrodite when it comes to humans. Yes, I know. Rio isn't human. He's an angel. He's fictional, and he's literally two people merged together. Because in the Devilman prequel, Demon Knight, Lucifer and a girl named Uriah, these two characters, merged together to create Rio. Uriah was her name. I remembered it. Don't know why the hell I thought it was Beatrice last time. But they merged together, and they created Rio. So Rio wasn't even born a hermaphrodite. He was merged together in Devilman Demon Knight, which is canon. Gonagai has confirmed it's canon. The only time I have ever heard the term intersex used in reference to Rio is on the Devilman wiki when talking about Devilman Saga. And that's written by fans. It's not canon, so it's not true. Not to mention the fact that in the sequels, Rio has been with women. And in Devilman Lady, which is a canon sequel, Rio is split into two people, right? June and Asuka. June is the one that's attracted to Akira, and that's his female half. She is biologically female. She's the one in love with Akira. And then Asuka, which is the male half, which is portrayed as a biological female for the vast majority of Devilman Lady, so that's a little complicated that she's the male half, but later it's revealed she is, and she can, like, morph and have her, like, dick come out, and it wasn't there previously. It's this weird Fuda thing. Devilman's probably got, or Gonagai's probably got some kinks, and I'm not going to shame him for it. Plus, Fuda Hentai's pretty great, but the male half, Asuka, doesn't give a shit about Akira. Couldn't be asked. In fact, Asuka is attracted to June. And there's this weird thing where Akira is reborn through June and Asuka having sex and conceiving Akira, giving birth to him, and then him immediately growing into an adult. It's a weird thing. Devilman Lady is fucking weird, and the ending is terrible, because Akira just teams up with Rio to fight God for no reason. Makes no sense. But anyway, I digress. There's also been times, like I said, where Rio has dated women in the sequels. For instance, in Violence Jack, it's heavily implied Rio was in a relationship with Miki. People would try to use the argument with me. They say he's canonically gay because in the manga he said he's not attracted to women. First off, he never said that in the original manga. That was in Shin Devilman, which was later included in the deluxe edition, which gets inserted into the original manga, and is questionably canon at best because it was written to be non-canon, but was later put in, so it's kind of retroactively considered canon, because it's been in everything since the deluxe edition. So, Shin Devilman is in the classic collection when it came over here and got translated, so a lot of people don't even realize that Shin Devilman isn't even originally part of the original series. But, when you think about it, when you got all that time travel shit, didn't that seem kind of out of place? But yeah, this is the last time I'm going to talk about the Rio drama, I promise. But let me just set the record straight as far as transgenderism, right? I do not have a problem with trans or even non-binary individuals. Anyone can identify however they want. I am perfectly fine with that. I am. As long as they are old enough to understand. I have problems when people say kids should take puberty blockers, and I have problems with kids getting transgender reassignment surgery. I have big problems with both of those things, because they are not old enough to make those decisions, which are irreversible, And when you get older and try to detransition, because people do that because they realize they made a mistake, when that happens, they are never able to fully restore themselves back to normal, and it fucks them up. Transgenderism is a mental disorder. I fucking said it. I know there's going to be people that are upset. But gender dysphoria is an actual mental disorder. It is, and I have nothing but sympathy for people who have it. It's a terrible thing. I would hate to have that. And sometimes the treatment needs to be transitioning. I think that should be a last resort. But ultimately, I think if someone gets more comfortable that way and they're able to live a more normal life, by all means, I think that if that is the route they need to go down, then they need to go down it. I have no problem with that. I would never have a problem with that because I'm a very libertarian type person. I think people should have the right to make their own decisions, provided they are old enough to understand the implications of those decisions. But what I do have a problem with is the way transgenderism has been so encouraged in society. Because I have no problem with someone willingly wanting to change themselves, but I hate the fact that it's like pushed on people. I've seen it. For instance, my brother has a friend who's kind of a friend of mine, but more my brother's friend than mine, who was transgender for a short stint. Nice guy, love him, he's really smart. But for a while, he was identifying as a woman. But he was chill about it. If I accidentally misgendered him, he didn't care, which is why I went out of my way to try and respect him and not misgender him by his own, definition. Because I respect the guy. So, despite the fact that I personally still saw him as a man, I respected the fact that he called himself a woman. And luckily he got over that. But the problem is, getting into that, he didn't want to be a woman originally. He was having these thoughts, not feeling comfortable in his body. He went to a counselor, and the counselor told him, no, you need to transition. You shouldn't just accept yourself. And he's like, well, I just want to be okay with myself and my body. And they're like, no, you don't need to do that. You can change. It's like that fucking psychologist that dumped bleach in his patient's eye because she believed she was supposed to be blind. That's awful. If he went to them and said, I want to transition, they should have been like, well, are you sure this is the decision you want to make? And if he said yes, then they should have been all like, all right, well, let's talk. But the fact that he was encouraged to do it in high school, not even an adult yet, is fucking retarded. That should not have happened. Because he didn't want to go down that route, and ultimately didn't because now he calls himself a man again and goes by his original name. But yeah, I have no problem with people doing what they want. I just have a problem with the fact that even saying the slightest thing, even slightly contrary to the idea of transgenderism, not transgender individuals, but transgenderism, will suddenly make you transphobic. First off, a phobia is an irrational fear or aversion to something. I have neither. I think people can do what the fuck they want with their own bodies, provided it's actually their bodies and not like a baby inside. That's a whole other argument, though, which we've already got into. And speaking of, did you know that Planned Parenthood is required to treat trans women exactly the same as regular women? So, if you go in and you test positive pregnant as a transgender woman in Planned Parenthood, they're just supposed to say, oh yeah, you're pregnant. But did you know if you have a penis and get a positive pregnancy test, it's a good chance to indicate you have testicular cancer, but they're not allowed to tell you that because they're not supposed to acknowledge the fact that you're not a biological woman. So for medical reasons, I think it is imperative that at the very least you acknowledge it. I realize that people don't want to acknowledge it, but male and female bodies biologically have different medical needs. So the fact that we can't even talk about it is retarded. I think people should be able to say whatever the hell they want about who they are. That's who they are. But I also think if you are in a relationship, you are obligated to tell someone that. Because I do think that people have a right to know before they get down and dirty. Because unfortunately, that leads to a lot of violence against trans individuals if they don't. I've heard people tell me that their friend got murdered because they were trans and didn't tell their boyfriend. Probably should have told them. The guy was still a scumbag for murder, but you should have told them. You could have avoided that. That is a major problem. You are putting yourself at risk, and they already have such a high suicide rate and a high rate of death. It's sad. I sympathize with these people. I just don't agree with a lot of their new definitions of these terms. So, just because we disagree on the definition of words doesn't mean I have any malice or ill will towards you, and I hate the fact that so many trans activists think that I do. I have no ill will towards anybody. I talk to people all the time. I literally have people that I have talked to who are Antifa types that I get along with really well. So, I don't have anything against anyone, even if I drastically disagree with them on a fundamental level. So the fact that people think that I'm this hateful bigot is just patently wrong. I'm not. But you can't rationalize with these people, so they're gonna still think I'm a bigot, which is fine. You can think what the fuck you want about me. I don't care. And I'm much more honest than I used to be on YouTube now. But this year, another thing that has happened is it's made a voter out of me. And I think I'm going to keep voting. I realize there's a lot of cynicism in the system. Myself included, I don't fully trust the system. Because there's some stuff that I can't really get into full detail on, because I could literally get banned from YouTube on it. But I'll talk about it a little later. But this year I voted for the first time in my life. I've been able to vote for 8 years. And this was the first time I felt the need to do so. And for president, I voted for Donald Trump. He was someone who I didn't like back in 2015 because I used to buy into the propaganda. But then around mid-2016, I began to start defending him because the media was posting all of these lies. Straight-up lies. There was literally a time when the media quoted him as saying, quote, burn the gays, when he was in, if you listen to the actual quote, he was saying, can you believe people would say something as heinous as burn the gays? It's horrible. I'm probably getting that quote slightly wrong, but it was something to that effect, and they were trying to put it as something he was in favor of. Not to mention there's the very fine people hoax, where in Ferguson, right, there was that thing about the statues. They were trying to tear down Confederate statues, and then there were people coming to oppose the statues being torn down. And Trump said that there were very fine people on both sides. And then he followed it up by saying, and we're not talking the neo-Nazis or the white supremacists who should be condemned, totally. He literally said that. You can look up the fucking quote if you want. He has condemned white supremacy more than any person I have ever seen condemn white supremacy, ever. There's a compilation I've seen that has 38 times when he has condemned white supremacy. I can think of at least 4 more times other than that video where he's done it. So the fact that people try and say that he refuses to condemn white supremacists, they're wrong. He has literally done it countless times. And so for a while I went from not liking him to saying stop making me defend him, to saying he's not that bad, to eventually saying he's great, and now saying I still think he's great, but he's made a few mistakes too. Early on he hired a lot of dumb people, John Bolton and a lot of others. He made some questionable decisions early on. He got better as time went on. He made some questionable decisions later on, too. At one point, he tried to say, video games and violence, the old Jack Thompson type argument, and I disagreed completely with him on that. I thought that was completely and totally wrong. And then as recent as this year, he signed that pork fucking stimulus bill that gives us each $600, but then sends money to Pakistani gender studies, makes it so that you can depict Smokey Bear smoking, makes it so that money goes to Israel and all this others. And I have no problem with foreign aid, but we are literally in the middle of a crisis in our own country, and out of the $900 billion bill, only $200 billion are going to the US, and all the rest is being outsourced to other countries. But Trump literally signed that bill and then said, well, I put red lines so they know that I want this changed. It's like, yeah, but you literally gave up all of your bargaining power because you fucking signed it, dude. I'm a supporter of yours, and I have major problems with you signing that. And then you have other supporters saying, oh, it's 4D chess, it's 4D chess. Not everything is goddamn 4D chess. As much as I defend the guy, I don't think he's planned everything out in advance. If he had, things would be going a lot smoother for him right now. It's ridiculous to me that everyone thinks that there's this massive plan that he's actually adhering to. There's simply not. And it disappoints me too. It really does. I mean, there's still a chance something goes in his favor recently. There's still a chance that could happen, but it is astronomical. You're much more likely to win the lottery 4 times in a row. It could happen. It could. And I'm hoping that it does. I'm hoping against hope that somehow he keeps the White House. But I don't think it's going to happen. It's just it's very, very, very unlikely. And I hate saying that. I do. Because I want him to. Because Biden is a terrible choice. The election, there was some fishy shit. I've seen the evidence. I've seen a lot of shady stuff. I can't go into full detail because if I make the claim that I think that something was changed because of it, that could ultimately get me a strike on YouTube, and I don't want that to happen. I think it's retarded that they are allowed to do that just for expressing an opinion, but I've definitely seen the anomalies and irregularities, and there's something to be said about that. But, obviously, I don't know to what extent that they made changes, because they won't even let us fucking investigate it. If you're so sure that it was clean and fair and proper, why do we not have bipartisan support of investigating it? We don't even have, by and large, Republican support of investigating it. And here's another thing. I don't like either major political party. When I voted locally, I voted for a combination of third party and Republican. I didn't vote for any Democrats because I think the Democrats have lost their goddamn mind by supporting hardcore radicalist groups. But I'm not against voting like Democrats if they make right choices. For instance, I respect Tulsi Gabbard. I think she's great. I used to have respect for Bernie Sanders, but he fucking sold out. But this year I've also stayed a lot more up to date on following that kind of stuff. Like, I try to stay as informed as I physically can now, which is something I didn't used to do. I listen to at least 2 hours of news every day, typically much more than that. And I listen to multiple sources, both left-wing sources, right-wing sources, centrist sources, and I try to find the middle ground and try to, disseminate the truth based on these other sources. I think that's something everyone should do, is independent research, but not everyone does that, and when people often do, they'll listen to their own side and nothing else. I listen to the Young Turks sometimes, just as insufferable as they are, because they are awful to listen to. They are awful. I listen to them too, just to hear what they're saying. So I try to avoid going into an echo chamber. I try to get as much information as physically possible from multiple sources who have differing opinions. And again, I encourage everyone to do that. Because if you just follow the mainstream narrative, you're literally going to get lied to. By both sides. And another thing is, Fox has fallen out of favor with the right because they've become more and more mainstream. And they've always been mainstream. I don't know why anyone ever thought any different. I don't think Fox has ever been a principled company. They've said some things that were true, and they've said some things that aren't true. But, the same could be said with CNN. So, I think that, people got woken up to the fact that Fox has always kind of been grifters and have never really stood by the things that they say. And then people have now started following Newsmax and OAN, and now Newsmax has fallen out of favor. So it's like, as soon as people on the right hear something they don't like, they often just stop listening to it. And look, like I said, I consider myself fairly right-wing centrist. I'm a Trump supporter. I have some conservative tendencies, and I have some classical liberal tendencies. I consider myself predominantly libertarian, but I'll admit I am kind of moderate in that regard, because I still believe in having some regulations. But I have friends who are ANCAPs. I have friends who are people who voted Biden, for instance. I have a very good friend who voted Biden. I have friends that are anarchists who just don't like either side, period. And, they consider themselves anarchists without adjectives, much like Michael Malice, who is a very intelligent man, by the way. I love Michael Malice, a very smart guy. But I am very concerned for the future. Again, assuming Joe Biden takes office, which I find to be the most likely scenario as things currently stand, I'm worried what he'll do, because he's soft on China, and China has been terrible. China has literal concentration camps in their own country, where they oppress their Uyghur Muslim population. And they kill them, and they harvest their organs, and sell their hair, and shit like that, and literally have them do slave labor. And then China also, oppresses the people of Hong Kong. They're trying to take over Hong Kong. They took over Tibet. Have you heard anyone talk about Tibet recently? There's a lot of bad shit that they do, but Biden's soft on China. And I think a lot of it has to do with, the ties that his son and himself have there. Because there was a lot of shady shit. The Hunter Biden laptop thing got covered up by the media, got covered up by Twitter. That's pretty shocking that can happen, because that would have swayed the election. There were a lot of Biden voters who weren't aware of that, and a high enough percentage of them said that if they had known about it, they would have voted differently. That would have swung the election. So, I think it's ridiculous when these companies just get away with hiding that. But I also don't think that repealing 230 is the right move. I think that enforcing 230 and going after the companies that, don't actually listen to it is really more proper. But repealing 230 will destroy the internet and only leave the big companies up, because the big companies can get away with it, because they'll just be like, okay, well, now we're publishers. What are you going to do? You can't make your own platform because you can't, because they're all legally liable and will get sued out the wazoo. So now that'll create a thing where the elitists run the internet. And they've already kind of monopolized it anyway, not in the, traditional sense, but in the more colloquial sense they have. Of course, there was that DMCA bill that went into the relief bill for COVID that Trump signed, which I already kind of bitched about. That DMCA thing makes it a felony to host, these websites that have pirated stuff. But the problem is that the terms are so vague that it could easily be used against pretty much anyone. Because they insist, oh no, we're only going after for-profit, big sites that, pirate stuff and then make a profit off them. You say that, but you say, a service, and a service could be literally like a stream, and if someone has something that is deemed to be copyrighted material on their stream, then theoretically they could be gone after for a felony too. just because of how vague the terms are. And they say, oh, well, we're not going to use it that way. Yeah, but you could get some overzealous prosecutor that's like, well, I'm going to do it because it's profitable, so fuck you. That's the problem with the way laws are written vaguely. They need to be very, very clear. On a lighter note, did you know that they found sharks in volcanoes this year? There was also a fire tornado. So hey, maybe we'll have a sharknado. But no, there was a fire tornado, which I guess is actually not like as crazy as it sounds. I think there have been fire tornadoes before, but still, then they found volcano sharks. So Sharkano. But no, there's a lot of crazy shit that's been going on. Also, the vaccine, right? Did you know how that vaccine works? I gotta be careful how I talk about this too, because I don't want to get banned from YouTube. But it's not a regular vaccine. It's an mRNA vaccine that literally modifies your RNA and mutates you to make it so that you're not prone to getting the virus. But you can still transmit it and get it and spread it to people. And it also has some side effects that have been found when they were testing it. Bell's palsy, false HIV positives, among many others. Again, I gotta be careful talking about this because YouTube is very overzealous about this kind of stuff. So it's freaky stuff. I encourage everyone to look into it because this is not a traditional vaccine. And it's been found that it could make women and men both infertile. It attacks the placenta in women. There's all sorts of problems with it. And the companies that make it have no liability. And here's the thing. Trump is the one who authorized this. Trump is the one who did Operation Warp Speed. I have problems with that too. Like I said, although Trump is the one I wholeheartedly support, I have a lot of problems with what he's done too. But I still think he's by far the better choice. Literally, Joe Biden was asked, about like 8-year-olds transitioning, and he said that everyone should, have their hormone blockers and stuff they need. And maybe not in those words, but they were asking about hormone blockers, and he said everyone should get the treatment they need like that. So he heavily implied he's in favor of hormone blockers for 8-year-olds. So I have a huge problem with that. Joe Biden's also going to sell us out to China. All of his policies are going to put America last rather than America first. We had our best economy under Trump in a long time. And Trump didn't start any new wars. While he did carry out some operations behind the scenes that were in existing wars, he didn't create any new ones. And we've come the closest to having peace with North Korea as we have ever come. And people get mad at him for that. They get mad and say he was cozying up to dictators. He was trying to go the diplomatic route, and he's been trying to encourage good behavior over there. I'd much rather try to solve things peacefully than have a whole new war. I think that the North Korea situation is only going to get worse under Biden because I don't think Biden cares about North Korea. But yeah, things have been getting crazy. There's been talks of states seceding. And there's been debate of whether or not that could be done peacefully. I say we just have to wait and see how that plays out. Unfortunately, with a lot of the bigger picture stuff, it's out of my control. Like, I guess as a group of, we the people, if we actually, all were to get together and band together, we could theoretically make change. But the problem is people are so busy fighting each other, I don't think that would ever happen. I still believe in trying to make positive changes. I'm not really for activism in a lot of ways, but there are times I have been. Like Heshi Tischler, I think he's done a lot of great work, cutting open the parks in New York when they tried to shut them down and discriminate against specific Jewish communities and shutting down their parks and stuff, whereas communities a block away were considered fine. So I think that kind of activism is the right kind. I think that, nonviolent civil disobedience is the right kind. You will get arrested still. That's how nonviolent civil disobedience works. But if enough people do it, they can't really do anything about it. But that people are too busy fighting each other to actually make that happen, I feel. And I'm still going to be cautiously optimistic that one day some good change can come, because I don't like being a pessimist. And I've had to tell my friends many times not to be so doom and gloomy. I understand the reason why people get doom and gloomy, because things look bad, but things look bad a lot of the time. That's the thing we got to realize is, just because something looks bad doesn't mean give up, because if you give up, that's how you lose. And that's when you truly lose, is if you give up. That said, I also don't think we should be unrealistic, because there's a lot of people that have been going off the deep end and saying a lot of crazy things. Some crazy things have turned out to be true. Alex Jones has been proven right a lot this year. Look into the Great Reset. That entire thing is terrifying, and it's basically already here. We're slowly transitioning into it. And that will ultimately end in authoritarianism. Orwell was 110% right. He just had the year wrong. And that reminds me, when I did my Orwell was right video, there was a guy in the comments, a very, very, very well-mannered guy. I have nothing but respect for him. But I have to respectfully disagree with him on a lot of things. Because he tried to say that, there's a lot of people in authoritarian countries that are happy, and I don't doubt that. But I also think if you're going and visiting China, and you're saying they have no problems living there, well, they're not going to tell you that because they'll be fucking executed. And, I'll admit there are probably some people that are okay living under the boot of tyranny because they don't know any different. But that doesn't make it right. I'm also not an interventionist, though, so I think that ultimately, for the most part, we should stay out of other countries' conflicts. However, there does get a line that gets crossed. China has crossed several lines. I don't know what the solution is because I really don't want actual conflict, but there's a lot of problems there. I think that the tariffs were a step in the right direction, but those are going to go out the window as soon as Biden takes office. But yeah, I've made it 10 years on YouTube. This has been a bumpy ride this year. I think that we're in for a bumpy ride next year, too. We'll see. But never give up hope. And I will say that I just plan on carrying out on the channel business as usual. I plan on getting back to doing anime reviews. Within the next few months, I plan on getting back into contact with Corbin, at which point we will resume doing our stuff with him, so like Sergeant Friends, and possibly the shit show if he's still willing to do it, because I know that he has some weird reservations about it because he's so self-conscious about how those things turn out. I don't understand fully why, because I think I'm just as cringy as he is in those, and I have a good time with it anyway. But I'm hoping, but if he doesn't want to do that, at the very least we still have Sergeant Friends and possibly other collaborations where we talk about specific things, maybe. But we'll talk more about that when I actually start talking to Corbin again, which, like I said, will be in just a few months here. Very soon. But I've gained a lot of new followers this year, a lot of regulars that view my videos, both subscribers and people who don't subscribe but check back regularly. I think that that's great that I have a dedicated audience despite how small the channel is, and I like having a smaller audience, like I said. I prefer it's just these guys like you guys that are watching this right now. Just the regulars and whatnot. I think that's great. And any new people that come, I welcome them. And I welcome people from all walks of life. Even if I disagree with you on things fundamentally, we can still get along because I'm that kind of guy. Because I don't believe in, disassociating simply because of differences in opinion. Because I think it takes all sorts to make the world, and I think that we do need some sort of unity, and not the fake unity Joe Biden's calling for. I appreciate that he's calling for unity, but it comes off really hypocritical coming from him. And I don't think that his party wants unity. Nor do I really think that the right wants unity either. Let me be clear, I think that both sides have their problems with being tribalistic. I think tribalism is wrong. I think it's definitely balanced more in one way than the other. I think that the left has gone completely insane. But I also think that the right has their crazies, and I also think that compromise is something that has been slowly dying, and I think that that's sad, because I think that we need compromise to get along with each other. That said, I also understand the people who don't want to compromise, because why would you want to compromise with someone who thinks of you as less than human and wants you dead? So I understand that idea too. But we're in a whole big heap of a mess right now, and I hope that it gets better, but I think that it's going to get worse before it gets better. But let's lighten the mood a little bit and talk about my plans for the next year on this channel. Well, we plan to finish up Season 2 of Sergeant Friends. I'll probably even have Corbin in the season finale, since, like I said, I plan to start talking to him in the next just couple of months here. So, once I start talking to Corbin again, we can actually do a proper season finale to Season 2 of Sergeant Friends. Then we can also finish up the unfinished episode, The Amazing Super Sham. But also, I plan on continuing Takeshi Tuesdays. I've already recorded one of the next batch. I'm talking about a movie called While the Women Were Sleeping. I've ordered some other Takeshi stuff online to get more topics for the series. I plan on doing a book review of Michael Malice's The New Right. Since I reviewed Dear Reader, I figure might as well review his other book that I'm listening to right now. I plan on continually doing DVD collection updates. I plan on, continuing all my regular stuff. I plan on getting back to anime reviews, back to Go Nagai content. Even though people... I'm hoping that the audience of people that came here because my Rio video was shared on, TikTok and Reddit, I'm hoping that those audiences, and the reason I say that is because I know TikTok, because someone literally said they were sent from TikTok, and then another one, I say Reddit, but it might have been Tumblr, it might have been who the fuck knows, But the point is I've had my videos shared multiple times because every few weeks I'll get a different boost in views on it, a boost in dislikes, and a boost in comments calling me transphobic and saying I don't understand the series. Both of which statements are not true. I very much understand the series, and that pisses me off more than the transphobic one. But I'm also not transphobic because I have nothing against trans individuals, and anyone who thinks that I do just because I don't agree with their worldview is wrong. Just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I have any problem with you. That's a whole thing that people need to start understanding, and it's a thing that's lost. We need forgiveness in this time, too. Cancel culture runs rampant. It's terrible. But then there's people who try to act like cancel culture doesn't exist. But again, I'm getting off topic again, going back to the, gloomy, sad stuff. So, I'm hoping that next year will be even better for the channel. I plan on continuing just doing what I'm doing. I'll continue playing games and stuff. I don't know if I'll stream again next year. I'm hoping I can get back into the swing of streaming. That all just depends on how some things go for me. But even if I don't stream, I will be still doing gameplay videos. I will be doing DVD collection videos. I'll be doing my anime videos. I'll keep doing the stuff that I've been doing. And I'll try to pick up and get better at it again. But yeah. This year has been crazy. Hopefully next year is less crazy. I'm not thinking it will be. I'm thinking there'll still be some crazy, but maybe it'll ultimately be less crazy. Who knows? I want to thank everyone for all the subscribers I've gained this year and all the subscribers I've gained over time. The fact that I'm at 980-something is ridiculous. Never thought I'd reached it. Thank you all so much. I have plenty of regular viewers. Thank you all so much. Even if you disagree with me, thank you for sitting through and putting up with me through all this. Like I said, even though I've been talking politics this year, don't want to make this a super political channel, but Red Eye Raw and things like that, I express my opinion on all sorts of things. And ultimately I realized you can't have everybody like you. You're going to have people that don't like you, no matter what you do or say. So, I think it's better that I'm transparent and honest with who I am, with my audience. But ultimately, if there are people that can't put up with it, I completely understand. But those of you who can, if you disagree with me and you can put up with my bullshit, thank you so much. I love you. Kiss, kiss. No, I look forward to next year. We'll see how it turns out. Don't really know what else to go on about this year. I mean, I think I've covered everything. Yeah, I think that should just about do it. Good luck to everyone. Stay safe. Hopefully things get better. Toodles.
That sucked. I'm sure glad that's over with.
If I don't eat rice, the power won't come.